Joining us now to talk about the bigger picture impacts of President Trump's efforts to drastically reduce the size of federal government is Jeremy Konyndyk, a former USAID official under the Obama administration. Also with us, Hagar Chamali, a former spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the United Nations under President Obama. Hagar, let's start with you. You've worked for the federal government in a range of senior national security and public affairs positions. Roughly 2 million federal employees have received this offer. The White House has said they expect as many as 200,000 people to accept it. I think the number right now is about 50,000. What are the impacts that this could have?
Sure, Jake. Well, I was just actually in Washington and I was speaking to many of my government friends. And I've learned from them that the majority who've accepted this buyout tend to be either those who are retiring soon, those who've moved out of the D.C. area, who don't want to return to the office 5 days a week, for example. There was a general sense of calm, which surprised me, but that might be because I spoke to mostly national security folks. And national security folks tend to have their jobs somewhat secure. And the problem that you have with something like this, again, as Rashab said, I'm not against at all trimming the fat. There is absolutely fat to trim, and reviewing processes and auditing them is a good thing. But it's the chaos and the unknown that has caused this disruption. And the problem with disruption is that you see that play out in our foreign policy abroad. So you're seeing programs that we have in Sudan and Africa related to AIDS and famine being halted in their tracks, things like that. And those are tools of our soft power. And we don't want our adversaries or other governments and partners around the world looking at us as a banana republic, for example, or that we can't function as a government even with a change in administrations.
So, Jeremy, there are roughly 1,400 USAID employees overseas, direct hire employees overseas, who will be placed on administrative leave in order to return to the United States tomorrow night, including their families. Tell us about that. Explain the real-world impact.
Well, we're seeing huge impacts already of the rollback and the funding freeze. All work was ordered stopped about 10 days ago, and that has meant things like research into an HIV vaccine. There was a phase 1 trial about to start across 8 countries in Africa into an HIV vaccine. That has stopped. The transformative potential you would get with an HIV vaccine, not just for the world, but also for HIV here in the United States, gone. Famine relief in Sudan is being halted. Kids are on malnutrition treatment that's funded by the United States in Darfur right now. That is beginning to end. Those kids go off that treatment, they will die. So we are seeing those kind of real-world impacts already in the immediate term of this pullback.
And Hagar, can you talk about what happens when the administration or any administration takes such a massively broad brush approach to so many agencies at once? Are you concerned that this will make the average working American question the idea of whether or not they should ever even go into public service?
Well, yes, I would say that it definitely undermines faith in our institutions. If U.S. government services are being halted, or if they just from a human aspect, if you see what a U.S. government employee has to go to, a lot of those employees live paycheck to paycheck. And if they just facing this kind of unknown and is on one hand, it's difficult for them. On another hand, it is absolutely going to disrupt services. And on the third point and the final point that I would make, and it's really important, is that you do have adversaries like Russia right now touting what the Trump administration is doing. That is not a good look. You don't want the Kremlin praising the dismantling of USAID or this kind of takedown of the U.S. government, because that plays into them. If things are chaotic back in Washington, they know that someone might not be keeping the eye on the ball, and that's very risky for those reasons as well.
And Jeremy, how much does it cost to bring all these USAID employees who are overseas home with their families?
So there will be a huge expense, because you're talking about thousands and thousands of personnel. You're talking about pulling kids out of school. It's February. A second semester just started. When USAID personnel go overseas, their families often go with them if it's a family post. So pulling kids out of school, pulling spouses out of their jobs, enormous costs to relocate them, losing the housing. They all have to now come back here and find housing. But there are security risks here as well. The President of the United States and the richest man in the world have been saying now for a week that USAID is a criminal organization.
Yeah.
In a lot of unsafe countries, that poses direct material threats to U.S. government personnel.
Yeah, it's not a criminal enterprise. Thanks to both of you.